Broadcasting live from the Wellness Wonderland, you're listening to the Wellness Wonderland Radio. I'm Katie, and each week I chat with the most inspirational people on the planet on how to stay inspired in all areas of life. As you listen, feel free to tweet at me at Katie Dalebout or use the hashtag Wellness Wonderland. I'd love to hear your aha moments. So grab your headphones and listen on the go, or cuddle up with a notebook as we dive in deep with authentic conversations right here in Wonderland. Welcome back to the Wellness Wonderland Radio, everyone. This is Katie, and today I have with me Isabel Foxen Duke, freedom from emotional attachment to food guru. She is amazing. She's a tell it like it is, hilarious, and just so freaking intelligent coach, speaker, person that is out in the world helping women all over the world release their crazy patterns with food, ditch the diets that don't work, and start to learn to feed their body with ease, where we all want to be, right?
Yeah.
So I call her, Janine Roth meets Lena Dunham. She's amazing, and I am so excited that she's here. If you don't know Isabel or her work, I'm going to just read off a couple highlights of the amazing stuff she does on the regular. So welcome, Isabel, first of all.
Thank you. Oh my God, I cannot believe you just said Janine Roth plus Lena Dunham. I could not. I mean, it's like the highest honor on both counts.
Well, it's so true. So here's a little bit more about you for everybody. And I'm just going to read this little part. So Isabel teaches women that you don't need to be obsessed with managing your weight in order to look and feel awesome. She also teaches you don't need to fear dinner dates because you're not sure you'll be able to eat or what you'll be able to eat because you're afraid you'll lose control and eat everything on the table, including 10 of the bread basket. She teaches you don't need to avoid every social situation because the thought of putting on non-stretchy pants makes you want to burst into tears. And you can arrive at the perfect size you were meant to be at without driving yourself crazy. And that's just the start of it. So I directly got that from her radical, amazing website, which I will post below. She's way cool, right? You just heard that. So from her work, from her ebook, How to Eat Chocolate Cake, or from her blogs to her telecasts, her personal attention to me and answering my questions, she's just been a tremendous help in my life and my journey. And so, like I said, I am thrilled to have her on the show today. So again, thank you for stopping by Wonderland, Isabel.
Oh my gosh, it's so my pleasure. I can't wait to be here. I mean, I'm so excited.
Yes. Okay, cool. Well, this is amazing. And okay, there's so much I want to ask you, obviously, but before we jump in, your last name / names is rad. Can we just talk about that for a second?
I mean, I get this all the time.
I figured you did.
Everyone loves it. What's funny is that when I was growing up and I was a kid, I just thought it was just the most normal blah name ever. It never occurred to me that it was so fancy or special. And then I actually didn't used to go by Isabel Foxen Duke. I used to just go by Isabel Duke most of the time, and then I adopted the Foxen because IsabelDuke.com was taken.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that funny?
That's such a funny story. So
yeah.
Tell me about the name. Where does it come from?
Well,
Origin.
I mean, it's really pretty basic and simple. My mother's last name is Foxen and my father's last name is Duke. So, it was my mother's maiden name. Yeah, just classic. I think, that's a classic sort of middle name formula is, what's the mother's middle name. So it's really, nothing too special about it. But it just so happens that both my parents have these really, really strong last names.
Right.
Foxen and Duke both are super strong. People used to run around when I was in middle school and stuff when I was a kid. People would be like, the Duke. And then when I adopted Foxen, it was a whole nother influx of, oh my God, Foxy Foxen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Foxy Duke. Yeah,
I realized that Foxen would be even more scintillating than Duke,
Yeah, they're both very powerful, and the order really works well. Like, I don't think it would have quite the same clout if it was Duke Foxen. For some reason, it's just the Foxen Duke. Like, I don't know.
You're right. There was a period of my life when I was a kid, when I was in high school, where I was like, maybe I'll just drop the Isabel and just go by Foxen Duke. Just seemed like super powerful, just so like, I don't know, something really strong about that. But, you know, you got to have a little feminine edge too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I like the whole thing. Cool. All right. Well, now that we've cleared that up, that was totally personal for me. We can actually jump in, because I have so many practical questions for you of things that I've heard from you and learned from you that I know can help so many people. So I want to definitely get going.
Cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. So you've created a wellness wonderland, per se, that you live in, definitely, and you coach women and teach women to live in that place themselves, releasing their crazy with food, like we talked about before. So I guess a great starting place is kind of your beginning. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how long it took you to get to where you are today with your healthy relationship with food and your body, and kind of what your personal journey has been like getting started on this path, and how you came to holistic health in general.
Yeah, that's great. It's you know, I could tell the long story or the short story, but I'll do something in the middle. So basically, I mean, I grew up, I don't remember a time where I wasn't totally obsessed with my weight and dieting. I mean, like, even as a very, very young child, you know, everyone kind of comes to sort of like, oh my gosh, I'm fat, I hate myself, I need to like lose 10 pounds, I need to lose 30 pounds. You know, everyone kind of has that, like, that moment where they remember things kind of getting out of control. I don't remember that ever not being the case. Like, I remember feeling like fat in like my leotard in ballet class as a kid. And, you know, a lot of that, you know, I kind of attribute to a lot of cultural and social things. You know, now looking back, you know, I'm very, very critical of even my pediatrician, and even sort of the way the medical system sort of treats body image related issues, and kind of, you know, talking about this, you know, very socially charged, very culturally charged issue in a way.
Like that weight chart. Did you ever have that, and like the height chart that they have?
Oh, yeah. And I remember being a kid and being scared to go to my physicals.
Totally.
Because they were going to weigh me. And I was
totally relate.
Yeah. So, and I just, you know, I mean, it's pretty awful. When I think about it, I get really angry because, you know,
percentile. That's what I always remember hearing. What percentile?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Percentile. I remember I had a little sister who was raised in this exact same culture. And I remember her coming home, and she was so happy. We were coming home from her doctor's office, and she was so happy. She was like, I'm not getting any fatter. Yay. Like, it was like just like she had succeeded, that she hadn't gained any weight. Like, it was like the best thing that ever happened, which I thought was kind of hilarious. But also really sad. And yeah, I just remember just being so afraid of getting weight. I was just always obsessed with weight, like always trying to lose weight. Always. I do not remember a time when I wasn't trying to lose weight or thinking I was fat. You know, some version of those two things, which I think a lot of women can relate to that. Some women I work with, they have a specific moment where they were like, this is the moment that I never had body image issues until I went to college and I gained 20 pounds. And then that was when the diet binge cycle started for me. You know, other people, it starts when they're a baby. Like, I'm pretty sure, I think the way my mother tells the story is that I was 2 or 3 years old, and I was, you know, on the heavy side for a 2 or 3-year-old, whatever that means. And my mother to this day will say my doctor told her, to put her on what she called the broccoli and skim milk diet. And like, basically, that was it. You know, from a very, very young age, I was taught that this was something I needed to be conscious of, and that this was something that was important. So fast forward.
I think so many people can relate to that, first of all, just before we move on. I mean, myself 120% included, but I think most women, it's hard to pinpoint that exact time for most people, but I think a lot of people have it for a really long time, even if they're not aware of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that like there are certain, I know a lot of women that I work with have this sort of middle ground where they're like, I always was conscious of my weight, but it didn't really start to get out of control until X or whatever. Like everyone has sort of their
connection to it.
Their bullet points. Yeah.
Right.
Like their historical bullet points when they're explaining their history with food. Food histories are so personal and so dramatic.
Yeah, and critical to this work to really get clear on that. You really helped me coach that, or you really helped coach me through that.
Yeah,
getting really clear on that, which we'll definitely get to. But I want to get back to your story for sure.
Yeah, totally. We should definitely not forget to talk about, the limiting beliefs. When did you come up with that limiting belief?
Yes.
On
the list.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of just got worse and worse and worse. I was throwing up my food, engaged in very actively eating disordered behavior by the time I was, probably 11 or 12 years old.
Wow.
At the latest. So I was pretty young when I was like really in full blown eating disorder. Like when I say eating disorder, I mean like self-harming behavior, like actively self-harming behavior. And I, and then that kind of continued off and on throughout high school until I went to college, and I had yo-yoed up and down. My weight had yo-yoed up and down, just like diet binge, literally like 40, 50 pounds in high school. Like that's pretty young for those kinds of massive weight fluctuations. And I got to college and I was at my heaviest weight ever. I think I was like, I'm not even going to say it because it's not even important, but I was heavier than I'd ever been in my entire life. And I just remember saying to myself, I can't stand this anymore. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get thin. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get thin. I don't care how bad it is for my health. I don't care. I really felt like this is the only thing standing between me and happiness. This is the only thing standing between me and success. This is the only thing standing between me and getting the hot guy I'm in love with, and, having being a star, and, whatever else. This is my life cannot possibly begin until I get to X weight, and I don't care what I have to do to get there. And that's when I really started diving into drugs, and I was doing a lot of really, really illicit things. I mean, the eating disordered behaviors got very, very out of control. And I was using, pharmaceuticals. I was using illicit substances, cocaine. I mean, it was really out of control. And I eventually got kicked out of school because I was a drug addict, essentially. So I got kicked out of school and I ended up going to rehab, which is, where I needed to be at the time. And that was the beginning. Like, that was the beginning of maybe I would say like a solid 5 or 6 year journey to where I would say that I am now. It was a long string of trying to figure it out because so many professionals say different things in this space. There is no consistency amongst what people are telling people to do to get over this stuff. It's a highly misunderstood field. There is so many conflicting theories, so many different ways that people approach this. Incredibly low recovery rate. I mean, I remember going into rehab and people telling me, you have like a 95% chance of relapse, whatever that means. A whole nother word that's just like rife with like social and like medical like constructionism. And yeah, so that's what ended up happening. So then I kind of just went on my goal changed. My goal changed from, how do I lose this weight? What can I do to get thinner, to how can I stop obsessing about food? And a lot of that for a very long time was, how can I maintain my weight without obsessing about food? For a really, really long time, I was still very hung up on the body image stuff. I was like, I just need to get my food under control, and then everything will be fine. But I wasn't really dealing at all with the underlying body image shit, which was ultimately what was driving my obsession to food to begin with. I think that's a major, major theme in my work, is that it's pretty impossible to stop obsessing about food if you think that your life, the outcome of your life, is determined by your weight. I think I said in a recent blog post, if you believe that your life is going to be what it is or not going to, is going to have a certain outcome depending on your weight. It's like you're handing food a baseball bat and saying, you have the power to make or break me. Like, show me who's boss. So that was, I think, sort of the ultimate, moment for me where I was like, why aren't, a lot of people in sort of the recovery community, I think, are pretty focused on the food. I was in Overeaters Anonymous for a really long time. And in Overeaters Anonymous, the answer is to just stick to your meal plan no matter what. And like, food is an addiction. And, it's like alcohol. You just got to stick to your meal plan and pray to God in between kind of thing. And I learned a lot of really wonderful spiritual lessons there. And I'm very hesitant to kind of criticize Overeaters Anonymous, but the concept of it didn't seem to be addressing any of the underlying issues for me in a lot of ways, which were that, really, which are really about being okay with being imperfect.
Yeah, and I think that's something, I actually just heard this, from Mastin Kipp during his extravaganza, and he was saying that, food addiction is a little bit different than the other ones, and I'm sure you've heard this many times, in the sense that you don't need a beer every single day to live. You don't need to do cocaine every single day to live, but you gotta eat food. It's gotta be part of your life. So you can't just quit cold turkey, and you can't just go into these programs and follow them that way. And yes, there's a lot of emotional stuff with drugs and alcohol, but there's a whole lot of it with food, and because it's always been part of your life, I think. And I think with the drugs and with the alcohol, there's emotional stuff, but you didn't grow up with it. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully not, but, you didn't grow up, having an issue with alcohol or drugs or whatever. So releasing that stuff, and not to say that that is easy in any way, but I think it's a different animal. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. It's a totally different animal. The way I often try to simplify it or kind of parallel them, the ways in which they're similar is not really about the similarity between food being a drug versus, heroin being a drug. The similarity is that the way heroin is a drug, the way heroin gets you high, it's actually the obsession with food, I think, that gets you higher than anything else. It's not the food itself. It's like how you talk to yourself around the food, like the power that you give food power. Food isn't powerful in and of itself. And that's where people get really tripped up. A lot of women are running around thinking the answer to their food addiction, in quotes, is just forcing yourself, is trying harder to stick to that diet. The answer is in finding the perfect meal plan. The answer is figuring out, what your trigger foods are, ... The answer is about the food. And the answer isn't really about the food. The answer is about how you feel about yourself around the food.
Right. Preach it. I love that. And this totally segued here. I had this down further on the list, but willpower is not a thing. I learned that from you. Could you expand on that a little bit? It's something I finally, I'm going to just like straight up pat myself on the back here. Like, since my work with you and what I've learned from you and your work, willpower is not a thing has been something I've been able to incorporate in my life. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I love that. Willpower is not, that's one of my favorites. And critically important to understand, because thinking willpower is a thing. And when I say willpower is a thing, basically, I mean that believing that willpower is the answer, believing that just forcing yourself to follow a certain diet or meal plan or whatever is the only answer is what keeps us in the diet binge cycle forever. That is the problem. If willpower were a thing, if willpower, worked and were like the answer to our problems, I think a lot of us would not have food problems. I mean, like, women, it is so degrading to women to think that every woman who struggles to control themselves around food doesn't have willpower. It's like, these are women who are running the goddamn world. Like, these are women who are running companies and, driving themselves into the ground and raising families, raising children. They are incredibly, incredibly powerful women. And they're made to feel badly about themselves because they think they can't get their food under control, when really when you have an emotional relationship with food, when you're good or bad, when you're okay or not okay, revolves around what you're eating. Willpower is, it's just not ever strong enough to overcome an emotional relationship to food. It's never, willpower is never going to win in a fight against that drive, that urge to feel better, whatever that means. Like, we reach for food because we are coping. Eating food outside of when when is appropriate, however you want to define that. I don't even really care how you define that. Eating food outside of when you need it is a coping mechanism that we have for a reason. We eat food to deal with underlying issues that aren't being resolved in other ways. So if you are making the underlying reason, if you are ignoring the underlying reason, if you are ignoring the fact that you're eating because you're so stressed out you can barely stand it, if you're ignoring the fact that you're eating over the fact that you feel fat and don't want to, have sex with your husband anymore, or, whatever issue is underlying, if you're ignoring those real core issues that are driving you and just make it all about the food and make it all about your willpower over the food, those emotional drivers, your body's natural instinct to cope with life is so much stronger than your willpower. Your willpower, no matter how strong it is, doesn't stand a chance against that emotional survival instinct to want to take care of ourselves. We have survival instincts to want to take care of ourselves. Eating is a survival instinct. Okay, it's not there just because we're effed up and have this little food problem in a vacuum. Food problems don't happen in a vacuum. They're about dealing with what's really going on. So that's kind of the underlying issue. The underlying concept behind willpower is not a thing. It's just that your urges to eat are never ever going to be weak. They're always going to be stronger than your willpower.
Right. I think that was great. And I also think people really don't fully understand, I know I did it until recently, how freaking smart our bodies are. Yeah. One of the things that really drove home this concept for me, I'll just tell a little story. I had a cooking injury, actually 2 in within 6 months of each other, where I needed stitches in the kitchen, knife injuries. And it really drove, I think I had to have that. I created that event happening in my life to teach me the lesson of, first of all, slow down. I don't need to prove anything to anybody with my cooking. I think that was part of it. But then also part of it was I really learned the lesson of how smart our bodies are. They can literally grow back together. Mm-hmm. If we just let our skin be, it literally grows back together. Wow, And that to me really drove home the fact that, if you are in a social situation and you eat a little bit more than you maybe your diet mind wanted to, or whatever you do, your body's going to balance itself out naturally. It's just what happens because of how we were hardwired. And that is just really cool. And when you can actually fully understand that, maybe you hear me say it or you hear Isabel say it, and it may sound okay, that seems right, that's logical. But until you really understand that, I don't think you'll really be able to honor your body fully. Mm-hmm. And
you have to trust your body in order to honor it. Trust and honoring are the same thing.
Right.
Honoring your body requires trusting your body. They're the same thing. It's about esteem, right? It's about, saying I love you. I trust you. I respect you. That's what, honoring your body is. So trust is an inherent part of honoring your body. If you are honoring your body by forcing it to be a certain way, forcing it to eat certain foods outside of what it maybe truly wants, that's not honoring your body. That's trying to manipulate your body.
Right. Cool. Well, okay, let's go back a little bit here. So what advice would you say for people just getting started on this? They know their relationship with food is super messed up. They maybe need to lose weight, maybe need to gain weight wherever they are. but they need to get started in some way. Could you give us kind of your go-to ways for people to get started on their path of getting a grip with their relationship with food? Maybe a couple of practical things to get started with, maybe like even like a little step-by-step.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two elements of this, right? It's about the food, right? Like it's about like developing a new relationship with your body. So like some basic practical tools around how to have a different goal with food, like to think about food itself in a different way would be things like, okay, if you want to transition into eating what your body wants, you first need to start listening to your body, period. I think that women who have been dieting and are really screwed up around food for a really, really long time, they don't even know what hunger feels like most of the time, because maybe they've just been completely ignoring it for so long.
Right.
They don't even know what satisfaction feels like. Like they have been out of practice in listening. So when it comes to if you are somebody who's like completely new and, been dieting like crazy and manipulating yourself like crazy, and you just want to play around with the idea of maybe transitioning into a more intuitive way of eating, eating really according to your body and being able to make healthy choices, sort of naturally on your own without obsessing about calories or, trying not to eat because you like went over your limit for that day or whatever it is. The first thing is just start to notice your body signals, like non-judgmentally. You don't need to do anything. Like you could even theoretically be on a quote unquote diet or be on a quote unquote meal plan and start to just, pay attention. How does my body feel before and after I eat? Like when women are first in, if you have somebody who's been like restricting really heavily or been really, really out of touch with their body for a long time, and they're just like past the point of like being able to even hear their body signals at all, and they really need to sort of readjust, I'll often recommend that person or actually be on a meal plan for, a few days that's, quote unquote diagnosed by like an actual clinician, like an actual nutritionist or somebody who can tell them what's a healthy amount of food for them to be eating for their body type, and to just start to notice when you're eating a quote unquote like normal amount of food, how do you feel? Like what does your body feel like? When do you feel hungry before you eat? Do you feel full afterwards? To what extent? Do you want to use a hunger scale from 1 to 10? There's a lot of different ways to kind of work on that. For somebody who's a little bit more far out, like maybe they can feel their hunger and fullness, but they're just been dieting and they're just obsessed with food. I think a lot of that also just goes back to, can you even just for one day, even though it's scary, play around with the idea of trying to eat when you're hungry, like just jump into the pool, like try and eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full, knowing that you might fuck up and that's okay. So it really depends on sort of like where you are when you start this.
Right.
You kind of have to, everyone, I think most women who come to my website are in different places when they start. So it's all kind of like depends on the person.
Right. And probably have different goals for sure. Something that I've been riveted by, and I know you talked a lot about this in your recent telecast, was the hunger and fullness diet. And I think you were kind of getting to that with what you're talking about here. Could you address that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's sort of like the emotional side of things. So that's sort of like the physical, like basics one. What I just described is sort of like basics of intuitive eating, right? And there's so much literature on the internet about intuitive eating and like hunger-directed eating, mindful eating. I mean, this is just like, you could Google intuitive eating and like there's going to be a billion hits and a billion books that you can buy to kind of learn about how to read your body signals. What I teach, which is a little bit more sort of next level above that, is how to get around the emotional stuff, is how to deal with the fact that you don't want to wait until you're hungry because like you just like want to eat those brownies right now. Right. Or you just like need to get home and like order Chinese food takeout so that you can just zone out in front of the television. Or you just can't wait for your partner to fall asleep so that you can like run into the kitchen and start eating Nutella out of the jar with a spoon, like that type of stuff. And that's really that's emotional. Like that's really emotional. And you could know when you're hungry and know when you're full all day long, but it's not going to sort of deal with that issue. So hunger and fullness diet is one aspect is really about relinquishing shame and judgment around food, which I believe is sort of the ultimate cause of binge eating specifically. I also distinguish between binge eating and emotional eating. Binge eating is like reactionary to deprivation. It's a reaction to shame, judgment, feeling badly about our eating behaviors. It's a reaction to our judgment of our own food choices. Emotional eating is like straight up, I'm eating over feelings. I'm eating because I'm lonely. I'm eating because I'm anxious. I'm eating because I'm bored.
And you may not be aware of that too, I think is something else.
Well, that's a really good thing to start to notice if you're new to this. Is one of the first assignments I usually give women is, can you distinguish when you're, okay, so if you're at the point where you know when you're hungry and you know when you're full, meaning like you know when you're eating because you physically need it and you know when you're eating because of something else. Is that something else emotional eating, meaning like you're just straight up eating because of a feeling, like you're eating because you're lonely, anxious, bored, whatever, or is it because you're shame eating? Is it because you feel guilty? Is it like spiraling out of control? Like I fell off my diet and I suck and I'll start tomorrow, so I better just like eat everything now because tomorrow I need to restrict myself again. And so the hunger and fullness diet is basically, the idea that, I think that some women start trying to eat intuitively and they become obsessed with, I just got to wait until I'm hungry and then I just got to stop when I'm full and then everything will be fine. And they're not actually dealing with any of the underlying emotional stuff. They're creating an enormous amount of judgment for themselves when they do eat outside of hunger and fullness, which, by the way, is gonna happen. Like, that is life. Like, you're gonna get invited to dinner at 6 p.m. one night when you ate lunch at 3, and that's just fine. Like, you can still eat according to your body's signals and not hurt yourself with food in that situation without, feeling like you did something wrong, like you did nothing wrong. So that's really what I use the term hunger and fullness diet as like a huge joke to make fun of how people manipulate intuitive eating. I think intuitive eating, a lot of people say they're eating intuitively, they're trying to eat intuitively, and they are missing the point. They're totally missing the point. They're just on another diet. They're just using a different set of rules that they can rationalize as being healthier. Yeah. And it's like it's a big joke,
Right. And that's what I love about it, honestly. Like, when I first heard that term, and that it's a satire, really. It to me really resonated, because I'll just be very candid here. I was totally on that, totally mindful eating to the point where it was like, okay, I'm having dinner with that person at 6. Okay, let me back into that. That will be a snack at 4. That will be lunch at 12. That will be smoothie. Okay, got it. Should I set alarms on my phone? That kind of crazy town with the food, right?
Yeah.
And, just thinking like, I want to be hungry at that time so I can enjoy a meal with them, but I'm going to have to literally back into this, make my day around this. And then pretty much what you're doing, which I really realized when I heard the hunger and fullness diet the first time from you, is that I was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. And you could even call it the waiting to eat diet, because really you're just like filling your time with other activities, because I was to the point where I was so uber healthy, orthorexia, whatever you want to call it, where I was, I'd have like my smoothie in the morning or something, and I was done, and I felt this like sadness or this like excitement. Sadness, it was over, and excitement for lunch or the next time that I could eat, whether it was lunch or whether the next time I felt those hunger pains, the next time I heard my stomach growling, I was legit excited for. And I would literally think, okay, what can I do to fill my time until then and be productive? Like, okay, I can do homework. I can write a blog post. I can, go on a walk. I'm going to get these things done. and then I'm going to get that reward, which is my lunch or my dinner or whatever it was. And I was literally doing my days that way and structuring my days so much around food that it was, what can I get done in between the time I ate, in between my next meal, and obsessing over that next meal, looking forward it to that point where it really affected my whole day. And then from you and from that hunger and fullness diet, I really realized that not only is not a healthy way to be, but you're going to fall out of that by no fault of your own. Just that's how society is. And it's part of life, and it's part of the wonderful joy of life. And food is freaking part of that. And that's okay. And I think that, it's something I'm still working on, but it's something that to really understand that and to really get that is like taking shackles off of you and like coming out of jail, really, if you have someone who has struggled with that. So I think that was really huge for me to understand.
Totally. And what I'm about to say is kind of radical, but I think that there's something to say about the fact that, one of the problems with the hunger and fullness diet, like you said, is like, well, what if you fall off the wagon, right? Like, well, what if you eat something emotionally when you're not hungry? Are you going to beat yourself up and hate yourself over it and, potentially spiral into binge eating and, other self-harming behaviors? And, even just the hate yourself part is enough to like, I don't want to go there. And so, I think that one of the things that I will say that I think very few people will say is, what if it was not morally wrong to eat something when you were lonely? Like, obviously there are better coping mechanisms out there in the world, and we want to be developing healthier coping mechanisms than food because we love ourselves and we want to take care of ourselves to the best that we can. But there's nothing inherently morally wrong with like eating a cupcake at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for no reason.
Right. It's just, I'm trying to think of something else to compare it to, but, like reading a trashy magazine or, like something like that, whatever, isn't probably the best thing for you morally, but if it makes you feel good in the moment, totally do it. Same thing with food. And I think, that's something that people can get really freaked out about, even on that hunger fullness diet. And I think a lot of that comes to, well, if I do it this one time, then I'm a sham, then it's over, scrap the whole thing, gluten all day long. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's where it becomes a problem. When it spirals, that's where it becomes a problem. So there's some things I think people have to just know, like, okay, that's a trigger for me. I'm going to not involve myself with that for a while because it's so hard for me. Do you think that that's something that people can kind of say, like, you know what? There's such a emotional thing for me around this particular food. Let's say it's tortilla chips, and I'm just going to have to cut off all tortilla chips for right now until I get a hold of that emotionally. Do you think that's a good tactic for people to do, or is that too restrictive?
I mean, I think I am of the mind that everyone goes at this in their own pace, and everyone knows their own boundaries, whatever they may be. That being said, you're never going to make peace with tortilla chips by not allowing yourself to eat them. And at the end of the day, when you are triggered to eat when there's a food, in quotes, that you feel like, oh my God, when I eat that food, I spiral out of control. I feel like like you even said it, like there was this tone of like, I've fallen off the wagon. There was like almost like this feeling of like, I've fallen off the wagon, like I'm going to eat this whole bag and it just spirals out of control. It's like, I think that there's something to be said for, if you were radically okay with eating an entire bag of tortilla chips, you probably wouldn't do it.
Right.
And I think that that's the place where it's like, okay, are you ready or not ready? Because a lot of women are not ready to be radically okay with eating an entire bag of tortilla chips. And the reason for that there's many reasons. It could be control issues. It could be other things that women can sort of work out on their own. I think a lot of times it's weight related. I think 95% of the time it's body image related, which again is why I go back always, always, always. If you are not, this work cannot be done to the fullest extent that it needs to be done without a foundation of radical body acceptance.
Yeah, and I think getting to that point where you really think about how a food is going to make you feel rather than what you're going to get for it in the moment, thinking, how you want to feel 45 minutes after your meal or 10 minutes after your meal instead of how you're going to feel during or whatever. But, and then going off of that, as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, but you know what? Sometimes that emotional stuff is just too strong in there anyways.
Exactly. I don't think I think a lot of women try to do that and that's where they fail because like a lot of women, that's like saying, oh, well, it's like nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Like you can say that to yourself like all day long, but it doesn't work for very long because that emotional urge to eat will always be greater than your motivation to lose 10 pounds or maybe even your motivation to, whatever. I think that when it becomes the miracle of an allowance-based methodology, which is what I call my work, meaning when you truly do sort of allow yourself and relinquish the judgment, shame, force from the equation, sort of the miracle of that is that you naturally start to want to eat according to your body's natural signals because you can hear your body when you're not trying to force it. There's something to be said there's a really, really great sort of idea that I think I've talked about in a blog maybe like years ago, like a really long time ago that I barely even reference, which is that your brain doesn't hear negatives. So when you tell yourself, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, all your brain hears is eat, 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 eat.
Wow, that's really powerful.
Yeah. So like when I talk to women who are like, I'm not judging myself, I'm not shaming myself, I'm not falling into that like spiral binge eating place of like, oh, I did something wrong, I'm going to go punish myself with food. Like that's not happening, but maybe I'm just like eating emotionally a little bit. Like I'm just like noticing that I'm like wanting to eat cupcakes and chocolate for no reason in the middle of the afternoon. The answer is not to tell yourself, don't eat cupcakes, don't eat chocolate, that's when emotional eating will eventually turn into binge eating because that's basically like the hunger and fullness diet or like it's a form of emotional deprivation, okay? But when we understand that all emotional eating is a coping it's a coping mechanism that has a function. Like when you understand that there is a reason why you want to eat cupcakes and you start solving your real problems in other ways, your desire for cupcakes and chocolates in the middle of the afternoon will naturally disintegrate. So instead of approaching emotional eating from a place of don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, start approaching it from a place of how can I start developing healthy coping mechanisms whether I eat or not? Because I know that when I develop healthier coping mechanisms, I know when I start solving my real problems in real ways, the emotional eating is going to naturally fall off without force. The second I try and force myself to not eat, all my brain's going to hear is eat, 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 eat.
Nice. I mean, these tips are just like, I can't wait to go back and listen to this myself just because all of this, everything that you say is so deep and it's so logical and just like makes sense. But at the same time, it's one of those things I have to like repeat to myself 2 or 3 times and say, okay, wow, and really like let it sink in. So there's just been so much here that's been so good. I actually haven't even asked one question on my little list yet, and we're already like way in. So I just have so many things I need to ask you. But getting back on track a little, or we've totally been on track this whole time because it's all been amazing. But something I definitely want to get to is how do you help people when their perfect size or their perfect size for their body, their set point weight where their body is supposed to be, is different than or higher than where they're comfortable with mentally, where they feel that they want to be. I think oftentimes people who struggled with eating disorders or any kind of dieting really at all, and just most people in our freaking society, their set point weight or their natural weight is probably going to be different than maybe where they want to be mentally. How do you help people get comfortable with that?
Yeah, so that's, obviously a straight up body image question, right? Like, how do you, the answer to that is obviously like, again, like you need to make peace with your body. And I think one of the immediate problems or difficulties with that right off the bat is that women are like, well, I don't want to accept my body, so I'm just going to go back to dieting. And the first most important and most critical step to actually getting to a place of body acceptance is just being willing to want it. Like just being willing to want body acceptance. I think a lot of women hear the word, positive body image or, you're beautiful the way they are. And they're like, no, I'm not. I don't want to accept my body. All I want is to be thin. Don't try to make me love my body. I don't want that. I don't want to accept myself. I just want to lose 20 pounds. And for those women, the question that I always have to ask them is, okay, I hear you, but you're going to have to make a decision about what's more important to you.
Yeah.
Losing 20 pounds or being crazy town. Like, is 20 pounds worth your sanity and why? Get really, really clear on that. Because if your sanity is not worth, the extra 5 pounds or whatever, you're screwed. Like, I can't work with that. No one can work with that. Like, that's right. Something that, like, you have to want sanity. You have to want it.
Wow, yeah, that's really huge here too. Also, like, going on with that, how do you coach people who are waiting to live their life until the weight comes off, or until, it could be anything, until the skin clears up, or until the really shitty haircut grows out, or whatever it is that people are literally holding themselves back for the, like you said, when I'm skinny, everything will be great in college. And, obviously you realize that wasn't the case. But how do you help people to go out and continue to live their lives even, while things are transitioning?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of like the, sort of the live more, weigh less mentality. I don't know how many of you out there know Sarah Jenks. If not, you should check her out. She's pretty cool. But she kind of talks about this whole idea of what I just mentioned before, which is that you don't need to try to stop emotionally eating. If you just start dealing with your life in other ways and start filling yourself up with richness and fun and beauty and, create a wonderful life for yourself at the weight you are, the eating naturally becomes less important, right? So there's that aspect of it, is sort of like filling your life up and being willing to create the life of your dreams now is sort of a strategy in and of itself for overcoming emotional eating. And I think that that's very motivating for people because it speaks to women's natural inclination to want to stop eating emotionally and lose weight. That's why the whole concept of Sarah Jenks' concept, which is live more, weigh less, works so well. Because it's still appealing to women's sensibility of like, oh, well, if I like live my life and I do all these fun things, I'm going to lose weight. Then there's the flip side of that, which is, well, what if you don't lose weight? Or like, what if your natural body size is bigger than you want it to be? Then it becomes a conversation about, are you willing to create the life of your dreams now, because otherwise you may never.
Right. That's powerful, and I think that's something that a lot of people have to get to. And just again, I think it all kind of goes back to body image, and I think that that's just really, really paramount here.
Totally.
But okay, now I want to get personal with you, if that's cool. I want to ask a little bit about when did you decide that you wanted to make this work and helping people through this your career, and how did you make that transition, and why was that important for you to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it kind of happened by accident, and a lot of it had to do with, again, there's so much misinformation out there and so many people spewing bullshit on this topic. And, I have a really strong, I have a pretty strong opinions about this topic. And
passion.
I think that there's a lot of people who are, I think there's so much misunderstanding, so many differences amongst people out there. And I couldn't really find anyone who really was speaking to my experience, which is, I think, why I felt really compelled to share it. Like, there were a ton of people out there being like, well, when you want to eat a brownie, like, take a warm bath, go for a walk. And I'd be like, I can't do that. I want to eat a pan of brownies right now. And, there was just no one really talking on that, like, level of, whatever you want to call it, of honesty, of, just dealing with the real issues. I just felt like I finally got to a place in my own recovery, if you will, although I don't really like to use that word because, when I really kind of got to the place I am now, I think I got there because I kind of stopped thinking of myself as a broken person. And that was a big part of my really getting to the place I am now. And yeah, it was really just about, like, I felt like there was this lack. Like, I felt like there was this hole in what was available to women. And I knew enough women dealing what I was dealing with. I knew I wasn't the only one who was, standing outside of the fridge with the door open, eating condiments with her fingers, hoping no one caught her. I knew that wasn't just me. And I started writing about it. I just had a really simple blog. It was like something I made by myself in WordPress. I'm not tech savvy. It was just really simple. And people reacted really strongly to it and were like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the beginning of that.
What else were you doing at that time, Isabel?
I was working at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which happened to be a certification program for health and wellness professionals, health coaches, which is what I am doing now, which was kind of a joke at the time because when I first enrolled at Integrative Nutrition, I mean, I knew emotional eating was something. I was still on my emotional eating journey when I enrolled in that program, but I hadn't yet figured it out by any means. So it was kind of just like more of a seeking the answers kind of move. And then eventually I did get to this place and started writing, and then kind of like all the chips just sort of aligned, and I happened to have this certification and all this information about how to move forward with this career path. And, I was very, lucky and blessed to have, friends and professionals in my, sort of extended network who could guide me in taking my work from being, a borderline secret blog that I shared with my friends to, a real website that I could start to develop sort of more of a following with and start really sharing my information, in mass.
Right. And I would actually argue to say that when you're aligned with what you're supposed to be doing, those people that you said that helped you will show up because you are so freaking meant to teach this and help people with this that the universe just has to line up for you to do that. And I think that that's definitely what happened with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there definitely was some divine intervention, I have to say. I mean, when I signed up for integrative nutrition, I did not know that this was going to happen to me. And, but when I was ready for it, I magically also had these tools in this network, and I was like, all right, like this, I can do this. Let's go for it. So it just made sense.
Right. I think that's great. And I think that's definitely an inspiring story for people transitioning careers or just wanting to share something you're passionate about. I think when you have a niche or when you have a need out there for something and you can fill that, to go for it. And I think that part of what you did is is super inspiring and definitely something people can learn from.
Totally. That's like my biggest suggestion to entrepreneurs is I feel like so many people out there are just like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I just need to like think of my business plan. And I'm like, your business plan will find you.
Right. What are you good at?
Yeah. Like if you just start like focusing on like doing what you're passionate about, reading what you're passionate about, you know, just start literally, as cheesy as it sounds, like being yourself and just start taking note of what that person even does.
Right.
Your business plan will find you, for sure.
Yeah, I think authenticity is just grand in every area of life, but especially with transitioning to what you are supposed to be doing. And just to bring it all back to food and emotional eating, I think when those other areas are in check and when you are being authentic in your career and in your life, you're going to be able to be more authentic in the kitchen, and the door of the fridge will be closed when you're eating, you know? And I think that's it's all obviously super holistic and super all combined, but just to bring our little conversation full circle, that's definitely what I would say. Totally. But staying personal with you here, since you are definitely have released your emotional stuff with food and are at a really good point in your life, can I ask you some personal questions just as like inspiration to other people and kind of how you live your life with food?
Yeah, please.
Okay, sweet. Right. All right, cool. So I'm going to give you a little scenario. Is that cool?
Awesome.
You ready?
I love these. I'm really great with these.
Okay, sweet. All right, cool. So it's 8 p.m., we'll say. You've just had a long day. You haven't eaten dinner. You're beat, but you're starving. Maybe you're a little hangry, as, you know, we like to say. And what do you eat / make, go pick up? What is your go-to?
I mean, it really depends on just what I'm in the mood for. You know, if I'm a little hangry and I'm a little bit, you know, wanting comfort food, like I think that that's okay. You know, like if I'm feeling like I had a bad day, like I might go get some, you know, noodles or something. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for, I definitely challenge the idea that food needs to be void of emotion. You know, I think there's something to be said for, you know, it's actually another coach that taught me it's pretty impossible to remove emotion from food. I mean, it's this idea that food is not just fuel and we are not machines. So if I'm, you know, really just like wanting some comfort from a bad day and I'm hungry for it and I want something and my body wants some, you know, some pad thai, I'll eat it. Like that's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. That being said, when I'm, you know, I always give myself what I need. So, you know, sometimes if I'm really like, if I'm sick or worn out or like I feel like my body's really tired, I usually do choose more nourishing foods that are like a little bit less inflammatory because I know that my body just knows that will make it feel better. You know, like I naturally gravitate towards something that I feel like is going to make me feel physically better. You know, I'm very in touch with, you know, is my throat a little itchy? You know, I'm very sensitive to inflammation in particular and also like alkaline and like acidity. Like for some reason, I don't know if it's just in my head, it might be like I might be totally full of it, it might just be, you know, placebo effect, I don't know. But like I feel like I can feel when my body feels like a little like acidy and I need to like eat something green. Or I can feel when I'm like really worn out and I need to just eat something kind of like low inflammation, just like a little like chicken and tuna fish kind of thing. Yeah. Excuse me, you know, vegetables and tuna, whatever, you know, whatever it is. So it really depends, but you know, the bottom line is no matter what choice I make in that moment, you know, if it's really like sometimes it might be a convenience moment. You know, maybe I just want to eat the easiest thing I can possibly eat. Like maybe I just want to eat whatever's fastest, and that's also okay. The point is whatever reason I choose to eat a certain food is fine.
I love that. And I love you saying that you honor your body in that way. And it made something else that's kind of unrelated come up for me that I just kind of want to tell you about. So I had Robin Euclid, who I know you know, on the show a couple weeks ago, and we were talking mindful eating. Mm-hmm. And she said to me this really powerful thing that kind of made me do a double take. And she was like, you know, I mindfully eat at my desk, and I have this little Buddha, and it's so great, and the Buddha watches me eat, and I'm like, wow, you know, that's rad, that's amazing, like, you know, no TV, no, you know, whatever, all that stuff, and it's great. And I, you know, I've been super into mindful eating ever since it was required in my yoga teacher training, and you know, I think it's awesome, I think it's great. But one thing that Robin said, she said, but you know what? Sometimes after I'm done mindful eating, I just, you know, want to have my apple slices while I search the internet and just like kind of surf and eat my apple slices. And I let myself do it, and it's okay, and I think it's great. And I was like, I did double take, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Excuse me? And then I realized, I was like, okay, like I think I've been on, definitely used to be on the hunger fullness diet, and, you know, still I'm transitioning out of it, definitely was on the mindful eating diet too, to the point where it's like, I was so consumed with like, no external distractions, must thank the farmers, must thank, until it's like, oh my God, no, like I just want to eat, and I want to eat quickly, and I want to surf the internet or watch TV, and like that's okay, you know, that's part of it. And I think, you know, that's another like satire diet we can kind of make fun of too, is like the mindful eating diet, and like taking that to another step. And I'm sure you can relate to that too, is just like, you know, I think moderation kind of is key here on all of this stuff, you know?
Totally. I mean, I love Robin so much. You know, Robin actually got me into integrative nutrition. She is the reason, she referred me to integrative nutrition. She's the reason that I'm a health coach.
Oh my God, I love that. I love her.
Yeah, she's great.
Shout out to Robin.
Yeah, shout out.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so I just love that for sure. But yeah, okay, so
she nailed it. I mean,
she nailed it.
Like I am, for me, this work really boils down to just like being okay with whatever choice you make, regardless of whether or not it's like a right or, you know, whatever it ends up being. Like in like a radical sense, you could be like being okay with binging even if you binge, you know, like that kind of thing, like that radical, like it's okay, because when it's not okay is when shit hits the fan. And, you know, I think that that's really sort of the bottom line, is that like we do live in a world where life happens, and food above all needs to be flexible. Like normal eating is, I've heard.
I love that. Food above all needs to be flexible. That's
exactly.
Amazing.
Ellen Satter, who's an awesome person who you should check out, said that. That's her definition. Her definition of normal eating is one of the most beautiful definitions I've ever heard, and it is that basically above all, normal eating is flexible. I can actually read you her definition right now. It'll probably blow your mind. Hold on one second. If you'll bear with me, this is probably like the best closing remark I could ever think of.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I definitely want to hear that. And then I want to challenge you, and I know this is longer than the normal podcast, but this will be a special edition. We'll just make it work. But I want to do a couple quick fire questions with you after you read us that definition. Are you down for that?
I totally am down for that. I love that. But yeah, so this is what is normal eating? This is Ellen Satter's definition. She wrote a book called Feeding the Healthy Family, which is just genius. And this is her definition. Normal eating is going to the table hungry and eating until you are satisfied. It is being able to choose food you like and eat it and truly get enough of it. Not just stop eating because you think you should. Normal eating is being able to give some thought to your food selection so you get nutritious food, but not being so wary and restrictive that you miss out on enjoyable food. Normal eating is giving yourself permission to eat sometimes because you're happy, sad, or bored, or just because it feels good. Normal eating is mostly 3 meals a day, or 4, or 5, or it can be choosing to munch along the way. It is leaving some cookies on the plate because you know you can have some again tomorrow, or it is eating more now because they taste so wonderful. Normal eating is overeating at times, feeling stuffed and uncomfortable, and it can be undereating at times and wishing you had more. Normal eating is trusting your body to make up for your mistakes in eating. Normal eating takes up some of your time and attention, but it keeps its place as only one important area of your life. In short, normal eating is flexible. It varies in response to your hunger, your schedule, your proximity to food, and your feelings.
Good.
Ellen!
Ellen coming in with the zinger at the end. Man, I mean, that is amazing. And I'm just going to put this out there. I've actually heard that before. That was given to me on a piece of paper the first day I walked into this dietitian's office when I was at the height of my eating disorder, whatever you want to call it, height of my stuff. And I've never even gotten really real with this with my readers, but I think everyone needs to hear that. But I also think that that can be super scary for people. And I think hearing that when you're at the height of a unhealthy relationship with food, you can think, yeah, but I can't have all the cookies in front of me because I just won't. Or if you're thinking that way, it's you're still not quite there yet, because you have to be. It's okay if you do. It's okay if you eat the whole plate. It's okay, you know, and that is something that it really takes time to get through, and I think patience to get to that point where you really think the way that Ellen is talking about.
Totally. I mean, this is like the pinnacle. This is like the ultimate goal. And, you know, which is, of course, like, this is like my ultimate, you know, I think of this as the penultimate. But, you know, there's something to be said for, you know, if you're just working towards this. And again, I think that working towards this ultimately also means doing a lot of work around body image stuff. Obviously, again, can't stress enough. This work has to be founded on a foundation of like positive body image, I think. But ultimately, this definition of food, you know, we're never saying you need to eat an entire box of cookies. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to also be where you are. Like, that's sort of, I think, part of the point of this is like, it's okay to be where you are, wherever that is. You know, whatever you do with food is okay. It's not with something that I say in my teleclass that you were actually a participant in is, it's not what you eat, how much you eat. It's not about the food. The definition of normal eating is not about the food itself. It's about how you feel about yourself and your relationship to the food, you know, period. So, yeah. So
that is amazing. That is amazing. All right. Well, let's wrap with some quick fire questions. You ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. Favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. Nice. Okay. Where and when were you the happiest?
Oh, God.
That was quite a contrast in question there.
Yeah. I would say I'm pretty happy, I think, right now. I'm about to move to Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really excited about that. My boyfriend, who I love, lives there. And I'm just excited to be where I am in my life right now. Everything is really good, and I'm in this sort of beautiful transition that's like equally scary and happy. And I think I don't think I could ask for a more happy moment than where I am right now.
Oh my God, that's beautiful, and like warms my heart, makes me want to cry. I love it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, what's your favorite go-to snack?
Probably, I don't know. Well, at IIN, they ask us this question every time we hire a new employee, and it's always like your favorite healthful or your favorite unhealthful. I don't know how I feel about that, but there's a part of me that wants to say chocolate-covered almonds, and there's another part of me that wants to say grapefruits.
Nice. Well, you can say both. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your favorite New York City meal?
That's a good question. Probably there's my favorite sushi restaurant is the sushi restaurant called Yama. on 17th Street and Irving Place. There's actually a few locations for it, but like I love sushi, and this particular sushi I think is like the best, juiciest, just like most awesome sushi ever. Mainly because I've been going there since I was 10, and I just think I think I have emotional attachments to that food. You know, like positive emotional. Like this is where like you can't separate emotion from food, and that's okay. Like I just love the sushi place. Like they know me there. It's really warm, and you know I've been eating the exact same like spicy tuna roll like since I was, you know, literally probably 10 years old, and I just love it. So
I love that.
Yeah.
So okay, do you have the same thing for breakfast every day, or what is your go-to for breakfast?
My go-to for breakfast is probably, I'm a nut butters person in general, so like banana with nut butter is always like usually a part of my breakfast, and generally I like to try to have like eggs with that or something. I definitely like meat and eggs, and you know I would never call myself like a paleo person, but like for me, like I don't know, that just like feels good to me.
Yeah.
So I usually do eat you know, some kind of like animal protein at I would say most of my meals. Please don't hate me.
No. Yeah. No, I think that's an intuitive thing to know that works for you.
Yeah. I don't know why it does. It just does.
Yeah, vibes with you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, and then like I'm definitely like fruit. Like I am obsessed, like I just need to eat fruit like all the time. Like it's really important. Like I think that I could live on like fruit salad and like grass-fed beef for the rest of my life.
I love it. Okay, what are the first 3 things you do in the morning?
The first 3 things I do in the morning are check my email like a crack addict. And you know, I'm not super routined in the morning. I wish I was more. I kind of want to say almost like I should be more routine in the morning, but I would say like the first thing I read the Skim. The Skim is so awesome. Everyone should go sign up for it. Have you ever heard of this? It's SKI.
No, we'll put the link below.
Oh my God, it's awesome. It's the coolest thing ever. Basically, it is a wrap up of yesterday's global news, but in like girl blog talk.
Sweet.
So it'll be like, yeah, so it's like hilarious. It'll be like, oh my gosh, you know, like Morsi was ousted, and you know the deputy secretary is really like bummed out about XYZ. Like
that is so cute.
It's really funny. It's really, really funny. So I always read that. That's like my new favorite news source.
I love that.
Yeah, it just gets me up like right in the morning. Like I just like check it on my phone. If I like don't want to open my eyes, I'll get really excited to read the Skim, and I'll just like pick up my phone from next to me and start reading the Skim, and then I'm awake by the time I've read it.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Okay, best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. Oh, this is my favorite quote of all time. It's really cheesy, but I love it. And it definitely helped me transition into the career that I have now, which is shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land amongst the stars.
I have that in my bedroom.
Yeah, it's a good one. It just really is so perfect because for me, I think most women, most people, it's like we don't go for what we want out of fear. Yeah. So it's like that quote for me just like really takes care of fear for me. It takes care of fear. It just makes me realize like if I just go for it 100%, even though I'm scared, the worst case scenario is still going to be better than if I only gave it 50%.
Yeah, I love that, and that just gave me like a pang to actually read this quote, which I actually just Instagrammed the other day or today, or I don't even remember. I Instagram so much, but it's from Maston Kipp, and he says in an interview, he said, "Effing ditch Plan B and go all in on Plan A. Plan B is an effing distraction from your dreams, and when you go all in on Plan A, not only will it happen, but it will be better."
Exactly. No, I could not.
And I loved that.
Anymore. I couldn't. Somebody once said to me, if you have a plan B, that's what you'll end up doing.
Right. And that totally makes sense. And I, like we said, I obviously couldn't agree more to the fact where I Instagrammed it.
Yeah.
So, sweet. Okay, I have one last final quickfire question for you.
Okay.
What would the name of your autobiography be?
Ooh, the name of my autobiography, it would have to be something like really like, I don't know, like something a little bit like abrasive, because I'm a little abrasive sometimes. My mentor, who is named Andrea Owen, who's amazing, she just got her first book published, which was called like 52 No BS Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life. Something like that. It would have to be something. I'd have to probably have a curse word in there. I mean, I think. Although I'm trying not to curse as much because I'm realizing that maybe it detracts from my message.
I think it's impactful, honestly.
You do? Okay, good.
To each their own, though. But anyways.
It's funny. I feel like more and more people in their marketing, more and more coaches are like throwing in like bitch or like, you know, like get over your shit or like, you know, stuff like that. And I'm kind of like, oh my God, this is going to start to be like played out. Like I need to start using my words because like very sooner or later, like everyone's just going to be like doing, you know, going this like edgy route and like meaningless. Although it is kind of, you know, I find myself trying not to curse, and then I just can't help it. Like, it's just, that's the way I speak.
I think it's part of life. And I think, honestly, you know, I had this conversation with someone recently. Like, it does make people feel more comfortable sometimes. You know, like, I know when I was a kid and, like, I heard the teacher swear, like, a boss, you know, at, like, a job and, like, an adult. I was like, oh, my God, like, they're a person. Like, that's cool, you know? And it just made me feel, like, a little more connected to them. So I don't know if that's the case once we get older, but
totally.
Anyways.
I mean, no matter what, my autobiography is going to be pretty casual, you know, and I think that's, like, a really important part of, like, my brand, if you will, or whatever, is that I am very casual in my conversation. I'm no bullshit, that's for sure, but also like a real person. Right. And that's the whole point. So my autobiography would definitely be something super, super cash. And
authentic. I think authenticity is hot, and I think when people are real, people fall in love with them, and when people are relatable, that's huge. And I think that's something that you definitely are to the maximum, and I'm just so thrilled that you were able to come hang out with us in Wonderland for a little bit and drop some knowledge on this whole eating crazy train and how people can release from that and detach from that and really start living their lives to the fullest wherever they are. So thank you so much for being here, Isabelle. You are amazing.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Katie. This was so, so fun. And yeah, I look forward to, you know, speaking to you again sometime. And
we'll have to do this again for sure, part 2.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week. Bye. Thanks for listening. You made it all the way to the end. I'll be back next week, but until then, let's stay inspired and keep this conversation going. So tweet at me at Katie Dalebout and our guest with your aha moments from this conversation. And like the Wellness Wonderland on Facebook so we can all hang out there and discuss how inspired we are and how we'll apply it in our daily lives. And never miss another episode or post from me by signing up for email updates on thewellnesswonderland.com. See you back in Wonderland.